In this second video of my series on chatbots and PDF documents and other technology like Pinecone and Pocketbase and render.com, you may have seen this flowchart that I showed in the first video. It basically just explains at a high level what's going on behind the scenes in the program. And there's actually a new part to this diagram. So if I move to the little hand icon and drag it down here, this part of the flowchart is looking at what types of things are planned for the next video. So let's go ahead and zoom out just a little bit here. So ingesting information from the web. So there'll be a new UI view where you could select a PDF file from your local machine. So whatever PDF file you want. Right now it's hard coded to Tesla data, but the intention has always been to make it dynamic so you can select any PDF file from your local machine. And then it will create a Pinecone namespace automatically based on that information. And then write that information into the Pocketbase collection, which we will be talking about, and I'll be giving a demo of that. Pocketbase content management system. So that information can then be used to feed the dropdown that you saw in the first video, and that will also be briefly mentioning in this video. So that allows you to select the namespace, which means you'll be able to query against each of the PDF files that was ingested into this system. So you could have 3 or 4 or 10. The limitations will come into play with how much information you're ingesting. I'm currently using a free account both on render.com, on pocketbase.com, and also on Pinecone. So I will at some point reach a limit, and we can look at that later. So once the information is in Pocketbase, that helps with the user interface, and then using the existing script to ingest the PDF documents you just selected, so from your hard drive, and then go ahead and accept the PDF file, and then it will write it into the Pinecone vector store using the namespace that was automatically generated. And then once you have the new information, the new PDF files ingested, you can view it in the web user interface, and that is like the program you saw in the first video. And also in this video, I have a new security system that's put in front of it so that you can't get into the application without passing through or going through a security system. So in the front end, once you've selected a namespace from the dropdown, that would be like, okay, I want to ask questions about my legal information. I want to ask questions about SharePoint. I want to ask questions about programming things, whatever the information is that was in the PDF file. Currently, it's just Tesla annual reports, but it can be anything. And so then the rest of the application would basically work the same, passing in a namespace as a variable before running the next query, before asking the question and others. So that's basically what will be going on in the next video. But in the meantime, we're going to take a look at a security system and how that works and how it is set up with the Pocketbase database and other things. So let's go ahead and take a look at that now too. And there's some new functionality in this version of the program, which I will be talking about throughout this video. And so now there is a security system, like a real world, I'd say production ready security system behind the scenes here. And it's an authentication and security system where you can put in your email and password and then log in. Or if you don't have an account, you can come to the account page and fill in an email and password and then sign up. And then an email gets sent out to you. And we'll look at all that in the video in detail, how all of that works. And there's also ways to disable that to keep people from logging in. There's multiple different ways to prevent logins if you don't want logins to happen at that point for any reason. So that can be turned on and off. like at a system level or per user. So we will be talking about this new authentication system, and it's sort of the main point of this video, but I also will be talking about Pocketbase, which is another cloud database and content management system that is being used behind the scenes in this version of the application. So we will be looking at that also. And to briefly show the Pocketbase homepage, this is the system that we'll be talking about and that I'll be showing in this video. And towards the end, I will go into the live demo so I can show you basically what it looks like and how I'm utilizing it for parts of this application. So that's what we're going to be doing. It's going to be a fairly long video. There's a lot of things to go through. And I would also say that in the upcoming video, video 3 of this series, there's going to be more changes made that has to do or allows you to choose different PDF files and upload those into the pinecone database and then be able to query against them. So it'll be dynamic. But that'll be the third video. And so in this video, again, we'll be talking about the authentication system, the Pocketbase database, and some other related things. So I hope you enjoy this, and let's go ahead and get into it. And I do appreciate you watching. And if you haven't subscribed, maybe consider it. It does help me out as I make more videos and lets YouTube know that you're interested in content like this so more people can know about it. And again, I appreciate every minute you spend with me. And all right, let's go ahead and get into all of the goodness. In this segment of the video, I'm going to show the render.com cloud provider and some settings that I will be working on to make this work. So here we have a new render account that I created for the purposes of this video. And so basically what we're going to do is choose web services. It, as it says here, includes zero downtime deploys, persistent storage, and PR reviews. Scale up and down with these. Now I'm set up on a free account, which Render does allow you to do some things for free. And so I'll go ahead and click on New Web Service. And off screen, I went ahead and connected it to a private GitHub repository that I called Scott's Chatter PDF bot. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on Connect here so we can start the process of getting this configured. So now it tells us that we're going to deploy a web service and we have to fill out some fields here. So I'll be back in just a minute to show those settings. All right, so let's take a look at some settings here. I called this name Scott's Chatter PDF bot, and I selected one of the regions here. You can see there's 4 different regions, and I'm using the main branch in the code. I don't put anything in the root directory. I leave runtime for node, but there are other options. And then there, you can see my build command there, npm space install semicolon npm run build. And then the start command is npm space run space start. And now we come to the free part. So I have not entered any payment information. You could see if you wanted to increase your instance type with higher limits, you have to enter payment information, but I am on the free plan for this. And it does work because I've tested it in another configuration. So I'll select free. And then you can come down here and select advanced. And if you will need to set up some environment keys, but I've already done that. So you can either put them down here, and I'll show them in just a second, or you can put them in a global file, which I've done here, the global environment group. I called them YouTube and env for environment variables, and then you can see the variables here, and I'll show the values: langchain, JS index, North America, Northeast, GCP, and then the public Pocketbase URL, which we'll get to that. Actually, for privacy, I won't show that, but you do need to point that at your public URL for your Pocketbase that we will talk about in another section of the video. So because I've already set up this environment group, I don't have to set it up again. So now I will go ahead and click the Create Web Service button here. Off screen, I had accidentally clicked on this Add Environment Variable, so I'll go ahead and delete that and come back here to our screen and click on Create Web Service. So we'll go ahead and let that build. And I'll be back in just a minute when it finishes. I will say that using the free version of Render, it is slower, and they even say that right here. Are your builds too slow? Upgrade to a paid instance to go faster, but I don't mind on the free account. For just testing purposes, it's awesome. I mean, it feels to me like the render.com is like a kind of a miniature version of Heroku, and it's just easier to configure and use. So it's still running, hasn't been too long. Now it says the build was successful and it's going to begin the deployment process. Okay, so I waited a couple minutes here and it did build it, and now it shows here that it's ready and it started it in their environment, and it says the service is live. So we'll take a look at testing it here in just a moment. All right, so let's take a look at a couple other settings here on the render dashboard. So here on this screen, you can see the name that I gave it on the other setup screen: Scott's Chatter PDF Bot, deploy succeeded, web service, runtime node, and it was last deployed 6 minutes ago. And so I'll go ahead and click on this now. And on this screen, we can see a couple really interesting things. First of all, you see here the GitHub repo that it's attached to, and that it's attached to the main branch, or you can manually deploy it. You can manually deploy your latest commit, deploy a specific commit, or clear build cache and deploy if maybe you're having an issue where you think that clearing the cache may help. And so we can see here that it says it was deployed live, and that was the commit message that I put in the copy of the GitHub repo. And the other thing we have to do is come down to the environment settings, and there's two options. As I was mentioning, the add environment variable, you can click on that and fill in your environment variables, but we're not going to do it that way. Down here, you saw a minute ago that I created the environment variables in a shared group. So here you can see I can select, which is nice because once you have multiple web services, if they're going to share the same environment variables, you can do that by simply setting up this group, and it says it right here. I will zoom in a little bit. Environment groups let you define a collection of environment variables and secret files to share across multiple services. So it's kind of a time-saving thing. It may not work in all cases if you don't want to share that information, but in this case, we're going to go ahead and click on YouTube environment variables and click link. And so now you can see the environment variables that I showed, they're all in here. And without those in here, if you tried to use this service, it would blow up, and it would give you basically a warning message saying that a red error message if you tried to log in to this application. So that's what you have to do to link your environment variables. And then the other good thing right here, you can click on this link. It's called Scott's Chatter PDFbot.onrender.com. And so I'll go ahead and click on that, and it opens up the new screen that I wanted to talk about. Actually, the authentication system and the sign-up system, that's part of this application now. So if you watched the first video in this series, you would have seen the sample prompts page where I had coded in various prompts that you can click on to quickly have it run the searches for you. And so if I try to go to that page here, now that the authentication system is in place, you'll see it doesn't work. It happened so quickly you couldn't tell, but it took me back to the login page. So this is what I was explaining in the first video, that once the authentication was up and running, that I would make this video to kind of show how that works and how some of the setup needs to be done to make this work. And so if you didn't have an account, you could come here and click on sign up, and we'll go ahead and do that here. So I've gone ahead and filled out a test email account, and of course for security reasons all the stuff will be deleted after the video goes live. But anyway, this is a test email account, so I'm going to go ahead and click sign up. And it looks like I typed in the passwords wrong. Hang on one sec. All right, let's try this again. So I click the sign up button, and it took 1 second there. And so now it has used the email capabilities of the Pocketbase system, which we'll get to that in another part of the video. But now I need to go check my email, and there'll be a link in there that I can click on. So here I got the email, and then I can click on the verified link. And so I'll go ahead and do that, and we'll be right back. And now it says that the email was successfully verified. So that means I now have an account in this security system so that I can access the application. So that's been done, I will go ahead and click on the login. And so here we can see the new front end page. So before you can access this PDF chatter application, you have to enter your email and password. Now, there's actually a way built into the backend system to disable logging in, so that basically an admin can approve people who are allowed into the application. So not just anybody can get into the application. So there's multiple levels of security going on here in this application. So I'm going to go ahead and type in my email and password and get logged in. All right, so I've filled in that information, and let's go ahead and click login. And now it's loading up the application. And so now it comes to the version of the application that you may have seen in the first video. And so there's also a logout button. So if I click that, it will log me out of the application and take you back to the login screen. So again, there's a new authentication system and security system and password manager and all those things. That's all part of the Pocketbase, which is like a miniature content management system. And we will get to that part also in the video. So now if you watch the first video, you'll see that I built a bunch of like pre-built prompts here in this page, and I can click on these, and basically it queries the PDF file and asks it questions, which I covered all of that in the first video. Let me find the flowchart here from the first video in case you didn't see that. I'll be right back. So the diagram that I created, I used this other tool that's in another one of my videos. It's called excalidraw.com. It's a free and totally awesome flowcharting tool. If you haven't used it, you should definitely check it out. I'll just quickly mention here you can import or load, open, save to, export as PNGs and SVG files. So it's really useful, and so it can work for free from your local machine. You can maintain, and there's all of these different libraries that you can load. You can browse libraries here, click on that, and it takes you to this page where you can do a search, and there's just endless libraries there to help you have all of these different icons that you need. So anyway, let me get the diagram loaded up real quick. So I've loaded up the diagram, and I will go ahead and just scroll around here for a minute. So I click on the little hand icon and I can move this around. Again, if you didn't watch the first video, this is basically showing what is going on in the application behind the scenes when you first set up your data. Now in the next video, there's going to be more code changes made to the software that I will be able to demonstrate, where the idea is to be able to pick your own PDF files. And I've actually opened some of those up as a sample in the web browser. So then you'll be able to pick your own PDF files, not just the ones I made in the first video, because that was really just a starting point as these code changes have been thought of and made. You'll see here in a minute what the plan is to link other documentation PDF files and to be able to query them this way, like I showed in the first video. So there's two really large files here. One is about SharePoint development. It's 9,786 pages. And this other one is 3,816 pages, which is C# documentation. So my plan in the next video will be to ingest this information and then have a way to select which one you want to query. So query, your own PDF files that you've uploaded into the system, and use the same interface that we saw in the first video and that I was just showing there briefly. The idea is to ingest that information, store your PDF files, talk to the OpenAPI, do the text splitting, embeddings, use the vector store database as we talked about in the first video, and use document loaders, and then use render.com to host it, which is what we're looking at so far in this video. So I just wanted to bring this tool to your attention in case you hadn't seen it before, and also this flowchart that's explaining basically what's going on behind the scenes here. And the reasons I mentioned that this drop down, there will be different options. Right now it's sort of hard coded to just look at the Tesla annual reports, but like if you had legal cases or the SharePoint pages or C# information or whatever it was, the idea in the next video will be to make it dynamic so that you'll be able to select your PDF file, have it ingest it on the fly, and then be able to see that option here. So whatever your PDF files are that you've ingested, the system, the database behind the scenes is going to keep track of that. Actually, the pinecone database and the Pocketbase database will keep track of the information that they need. So let's go ahead and pick one of these. Say, can you list all of the Tesla sales channels? And let's give it a second here and see what it's going to tell us. So it's reading through the original Tesla PDF files, and you can see the sources here where it located the information. In the source documents. So again, the idea is just with the sample prompts to make it easier to ask questions. Now in my other video, I show a different React application that actually, it has a lot more information in it about dashboards, like it's keeping track of the cost of all of this for each user. It's keeping track of the cost of the questions that you're asking it. So every one of these questions costs money. Even though you're on a free plan, if you've signed up for that, it still is costing or using up your credit. So that other application you may want to take a look at in the other video that I recently uploaded, so you can see that dashboard. It's like 3-tier. It's for each question, it's per user, and per system. So it's keeping track of all that and putting it on one dashboard. And it also remembers all your questions. I just don't have that kind of functionality yet in this program, but you definitely should go check out that video if this is interesting at all. And you can see how that other application works. So now I'll go ahead and click log out, and you see it comes back to this page. And so I'll paste the page we were just on back into the browser to try and get back in there, and we'll see that it's not going to allow us to do that. In fact, I just went to the sign up page so you can see what happens here. So there is the sample prompts page that we were just on when I was logged in. And now you see it just redirects you back. It's telling you, hey, you got to log in first. That's basically the new security system authentication happening. There's also a database that will be showing in the video here. And let's go back to the render.com just for a moment and kind of recap there. And I will mention it did fail a deploy after I made those. Right here you can see I added the environment variables. Well, I manually redeployed it and it was fine. I think something got a little messed up with that when it tried to deploy it on its own. So I just went ahead and cleared the cache and redeployed it, and you've just been seeing me use that application. So now it's live, and that's this URL. So I know that's a lot of things we've gone over so far, but Render really makes it easy to set up your web services and set up your environment variables and share that information. And again, this is on a free account, so it's really nice that you have all of these features built in as you're building applications like this. And so I wanted to point out the authentication and the login and the security system. So it's locked down now. And I think we'll move on to another part of the video where we'll talk about the database side of things, and that would be the Pocketbase database, not the pinecone, because we already talked about the pinecone database in the first video of this series. So I won't be going through that again. If you need to know more about how that was all set up, you can go look at it, the first video. What I would say is in the next video, I will be talking a little bit more about that, because there will be some new changes into the code that are related to the pinecone namespaces and how things are set up dynamically. So we will be talking about it in the next video, just not now. While we're still in the render dashboard, I did want to point out a couple things in case you've never used this service before. So I'll just kind of click through these options here on the left side so you can see what's available and what's not available. So we have logs. And so in the code, there's some debugging information being printed out just as the program's being worked on. So you can see that information here in the log, which is kind of nice when you're testing and debugging things. The disks, like if you wanted to use a persistent disk, which is what we will be talking about in the database side, it costs $7 a month. And because the database behind all of this is very small, it doesn't consume that much space at all, and it will never go over the $7 a month. Because if you don't have your database hosted here, you have to host it somewhere else, and that could cost even more money. The environment variables, we talked about that. We don't have access to shell. It says right here, shell's not supported for the free instant types. And so you can have like an interactive shell here, which can be pretty handy. PRs, when you enable pull request previews for this service, Render will automatically create a new instance of your service anytime a pull request is created from the GitHub repo. The instance will inherit settings from the service, but will be based on the code in the PR. It will have its own URL, which can be used to review the code before merging. It will be deleted automatically when the PR is closed. So if I wanted to, I could click on enable PR reviews. I won't do it right now, but again, I want to point that out. Other cloud services that I've used do offer some features like that, and it's very handy if you have testers or a testing team and you don't want to interfere with your main branches, you can enable these PR reviews. The jobs are not supported in the free instance types, but they can be handy also depending on what you need to do, like one-off jobs, scheduled tasks, things like that. It seems like I did use them at some point. I haven't used them recently. And then metrics, they have some basic metrics here, which is nice, showing your usage and that I've used 0% of my monthly quota. And scaling, of course, since we are on the free plan, we can't scale anything, but if you did need to scale things up, they do have some scaling options beyond a single instance. And as you may have seen or noticed in the beginning of the video when we were choosing and setting this up, you could choose from all kinds of different and more powerful configurations of this system, but we chose the free one. And then the settings, just in case there was anything that I didn't go over, I'll scroll through this. I know we looked at this part of the setup here through the build commands, the start commands, auto deploy, automatically deploy on every push to your repository or changes to your service, ? So I have that set to yes. So as I push code to the main repository, it would go ahead and automatically deploy this, which is kind of nice. You may not want it to do that, but you can also use deploy hooks. And if you wanted to set up a custom domain, you can do that. And here are PR previews, which I believe, yes, we were talking about that. Health and alerts. I really haven't used these parts of render, not recently anyway. If you want to do a health check path, if you're running a server, enter the path where your server will always return a 200, and they'll use it to monitor your app for 0 downtime deploys, so that's pretty handy. And if you want to set failure notifications, you can set that there, or delete. Or another really nice thing here is if you don't want to delete your web service, like for instance, after I make this video, I can suspend the web service so that no one can access it. Or if you just, for whatever reason, need to suspend it because maybe you don't want people accessing it, you can suspend the web service. It doesn't delete it, and you will not be charged while the service is suspended. Now, I know from other cloud providers I've used, I don't think very many of them give you this exact option. You just have to like get rid of it or remove it, but here you can suspend it. So I did want to scroll down and point that out. So there you go. That's a kind of a whirlwind tour of all of the different settings in Render and how you can set up a web service, how you can access the running program like we did, the Scott's Chatter PDF bot, how it now has a built-in security system and an authentication system and also an account creation system. And all that is feeding back into the Pocketbase database. So you've heard me mention the Pocketbase. I thought I would pop over here to the Pocketbase website. Again, if you've never used it, maybe you want to check it out. I really like working with it. It's very straightforward and it does give you a lot of features, and it can be quite scalable if you do some Googling or maybe even ask ChatGPT, but it probably doesn't know about it because it's a newer service. So if you just go to Google and look, you can find out people are talking about the amazing throughput that it can have. And so here it's just letting us know open source backend for your next software as a service and mobile app all in one file. You get a real-time database, you get authentication, you get file storage, and you get an admin dashboard. And I'll briefly show that so you can have some idea of what it actually looks like in a live demo. We may go ahead and just use their live demo also. But let's scroll down a little bit more here and see some of the other features, because everything you just saw working is using this Pocketbase database, cloud database, or software as a service. So it's a real-time database and embedded performant database with schema builder, data validations, real-time subscriptions, and an easy to use REST API. So here they're showing some sample code, which is basically what is used in the application I was showing. It does some similar things to this. So it's really nice how they show you sample code right here. For the authentication, how do you set it up? You create your Pocketbase instance and pass in some parameters to it. And of course your email and password comes from the screen like you saw. And then it does the authentication. And also sending the verification email. That has to be set up in Pocketbase, which it's really easy to set up. You just have to have an SMTP account somewhere. And if you have that, then you can go ahead and it's basically one line of code here. And then you send the password if you're going to do a password reset, or send a request email change email. So the file storage, I haven't used that in this particular version of it. And in this application, it wasn't necessary. And here you can see it integrates nicely with the Vue Dart SDK, the JavaScript SDK, the Vue JavaScript SDK, Angular, React. So that's like a quick summary of the features of it. And again, you can kind of see on the screen how it's really pretty slimmed down, pretty basic. So let's go ahead and just look at their live demo, and I can explain a couple other things. Here you can see they're saying, hey, this is a demo of the dashboard. That's what you get for free when you sign up and get it set up in your backend system. The database resets every hour. Real-time data and file upload are disabled. To log in, they show you the email and username to use. So let's just go ahead and click on login. So this is what the user interface looks like. And you can see our users here that are in this sample database. And if we click on one of the users, here you can see the ID of the user, what their username is, what their email is. And so you saw me fill out my email. This is where it ended up. It ended up in a user account here in Pocketbase. And if you wanted to change the password, you could do that. The verified is one of the ways you can block people from logging in. If you say, yes, I want to go ahead and change it, and then their account's no longer verified, and so then they couldn't log in. And in another system that I've worked on before, there's some additional logic, like an admin setting that says, hey, the login system is turned off. So there's multiple levels of blocking people from logging into the system. So that's basically what a user account looks like and what their authorized providers are. And in this case, there's no linked OAuth 2 providers. And so then this is again a collection. It's kind of like a miniature content management system. So another collection here is called messages, and that's what we're looking at there. You can see the ID, what the message is, who the author was. And here I'm just moving my mouse over the information and you can see what's in there. And if you click the right arrow here, it shows the email messages record. And then if we go to post, that's another collection that was defined in this database. So you can see there's like a ID, a title, a description. And if I click on this, you can see how there is also a fancy editor here, so you can format your information and then you use that in your application. You can have option screens like option A, B, C, and images if you want to upload images. That was that image provider that I mentioned briefly before. And then there's another collection here called Messages Report, or if you want to create a new collection, you just click that and you give it a name. Say we want to call it, I don't know, accounts. What type do you want it to be? A base, a view, or an auth collection? We're just going to call it a base collection. And then you can like add new fields. Do you want your field to be plain text, a rich editor, a number, a Boolean select? So you can create your collection this way by just clicking on a few buttons here, and then you click create. And again, then you can use this collection in your source code, like in the React application or other applications. Here I'll click on the edit collection. And so here you can see like a query you could run against it or the API rules. We can click on the API preview, and here it shows some additional JavaScript and other code that you can use in the API details of how to get the information and different parameters that it accepts and the different types of responses. So it's, I think, a really nice, clean way to be able to, get access to all this information right here in the admin panel. And so that was for list or search, and then this is for view. Then you can click on logs, and it does have some basic logging information in here, which is nice. And if I click on that, you can see other basic information about the request that was made. And then lastly is the settings. So we have system settings, mail settings, file storage, export your collections or import collections. You have auth providers, token options, and admins. So here we have the name of the application, Acme, and what the URL is for it. And how long do you want your logs retained? And I do believe on the free account, it's only 7 days. And here it's not set up right now, but if you wanted to use the SMTP server, you click on this and then you just fill in your information and hit save. And now the system can send out emails for you through your code. So it's got some mail settings built in. File storage, if you need to hook up to that, you can fill in your information for that. If you wanted to export your collections, you can do that. Or you can download it as JSON. Or if you wanted to import collections, auth providers. You can see all the different options here that you have. It's pretty flexible. Token options. There's a lot of options here for your tokens, like what the duration is going to be for different tokens. And then for admins, here you can see who the admin of the application is. So that's basically the main features. I click through all of these different toolbar options here: collections, logs, settings for the entire application, and then Pocketbase, the users, and configuration of an individual collection. Now, that is what is being used behind the application that I just showed. And I plan to, in the next video, we will go into more detail on an actual implementation of the Pocketbase along with the other changes to the application, as I was indicating, which will be selecting your own PDF files and then being able to query against them and to have a drop down to select. Well, I think that's going to conclude this video. I know we went through a lot of things. I do hope you found it interesting and helpful. And the third video will really bring up some more amazing things that can be done with this set of technology. And again, I thank you for watching my videos, and I will talk to you pretty soon in the next video. I did want to briefly mention their documentation on Pocketbase. They have good documentation here. It talks about the basics, the introduction to the system, how to set it up, talking about collections, which we looked at the actual working system, API rules and filters, client-side integration with SDKs for JavaScript and Dart, the authentication side, file upload and handling, expanding relations. There's ways to do that when you're setting up the collections, as they say right here. Pocket-based collections allow you to expand record relation fields directly in the return response without making additional requests by just using the expand query parameter. And then they have this going to production, which I talked about previously in the video. We looked at some of that. And then there's just more information here going into more details. So they do have good documentation, and I would recommend taking a look at that. Well, with all that said, this will be a wrap to this video. It'll be the end of the video. And in the next video, again, the idea is to talk about the changes to the application that are in relation to being able to choose your own PDF files, ingest them into the system, ask questions against them, and to select from a drop-down list of the different PDF files. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. If you like this channel, please like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified when I post new content.